Hi everyone, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us today. We'll give a few moments here for people to still join in from our lobby. Just wanted to welcome you to today's webinar though for Microsoft's new commerce experience. Microsoft has changes that roll out throughout the year. However, we thought this was a pretty significant one, global changes affecting every business. So we wanted to make sure that we get this information out to you, whether you are a client of PGH or just a business that needs to know this information. So as we begin, I wanted to go over today's list of speakers. So you'll have myself, Nicole Murtha. I am our marketing coordinator here at PGH Network, and we'll kind of be on the back end of things here coordinating today's event. We have Derek Geisler, our director of sales and marketing. He is going to be going over everything hand in hand with our expert of the day, Ian Konecki. He is our channel account manager from PAX8, who we have partnered with. Again, they're going to be taking a deep dive into everything really. So taking a look at today's agenda, it will be 60 minutes, which may sound a little overwhelming for Microsoft webinar. However, there's a lot of important information to go over today. So going to roll through our introductions of PGH and PAX8, take a pretty high level look at what an NCE is for Microsoft, then dive deeper into it, go over some common questions that we have been receiving, especially that Ian has been receiving, and then open it up to a Q&A for anything that may have not been answered or any scenarios not covered. So Derek, I think it's time for you.
Thanks, Nicole. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining again. Welcome to our monthly event. We like to host these on a monthly basis. As you guys have, for those of you that have joined our events in the past, we tend to go over a lot of different topics. We focused a lot in the last quarter of last year on security. Today, we're going to be talking about Microsoft and their new licensing structure. And then just want to let you guys know, as I had mentioned, we're going to be doing these things on a monthly basis. We've got some really cool content coming up over the course of the next 6 months. So I would recommend that that you join these whenever you can. The purpose of these events are to really educate both our clients and prospects and even just general businesses alike. So if you have other people that are interested in content like this, please feel free, forward these events over to them. For anybody that wants to get the recording, Nicole will be sending the event recording out following the event. So just a couple things to kind of check off the list before we get started. So the purpose of the event today is going to be talking about Microsoft. I wanted to just give a brief explanation of who PGH is. For those of you who aren't familiar, we are a local IT support company here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. For the most part, regional. We have a couple offices outside of the Pittsburgh marketplace. We also offer full-based IT support. We offer IT support in a co-managed environment where perhaps you already have an IT company, or an IT group, and you need just a little bit of help. And in addition to that, we do things like hosted voice over IP, Microsoft services, of course. We are a cloud service provider for Microsoft, and things like backup disaster recovery, a lot of different avenues that we provide for clients. Joining us today is Ian Konecki, and Ian is with PAX8. PAX8 is one of our distributors that we use, and they're honestly one of the larger distributors that we use. And they really help us with things like our Microsoft licensing and what the structure looks like around that, and a lot of other software licensing, software as a service applications. So really excited. We've been partners with these guys for a few years. They've been fantastic to work with, and Ian's going to assist us in some of the subject matter today, right? And as I had mentioned, we're talking about Microsoft NCE. So what is Microsoft NCE? Microsoft NCE is their new commerce experience. Basically, it's Microsoft's way of changing the game mid-game. They do that so well. They do that pretty often, right? They are the 800-pound gorilla, so they make their own rules. So you'll notice that as we kind of go through this process. And the purpose of today is really just to educate everyone on what this is going to look like, some of the timeline that we're going to be running into. So the people that need to worry about this are anybody that's using Microsoft from a 365 Office 365 experience, Microsoft Dynamics, which is Microsoft's CRM solution, and Microsoft's Power Platform, which is a subscription-based service for their automation solutions, their Power Automate applications and things like that. So be aware that if you are using any of these applications, in addition to that, some of the Azure stuff, which kind of folds in Office 365 a little bit, all of this is going to be a single platform that Microsoft is kind of pushing us towards. So with that being said, I was going to go ahead and turn over the controls to Ian, and Ian is our subject matter expert today, and he's going to be talking through what this looks like over the next, 6 to 12 months.
Thanks, Derek. Appreciate it. You're 100% correct. So from a functionality of the licenses that everybody's currently using today, nothing has changed. Microsoft just changed how the licenses are acquired and the process for that. And most importantly, how the licenses are paid for and commitments. So starting March 1st, there is going to be a global increase to all the Microsoft licensing, right? And they haven't raised the price in 10 years, so they decided it's time for them to raise the price. So that will be going into effect March 1st on all new licenses that are available. Now, we need to pause before we get to the March 10th, where you'll see Dynamics and Modern Work being purchased through NCE and July renewals. There's another thing that we really should talk about, and we may want to come back to this slide and go over the dates, but there are going to be some commitment changes as well to this licensing. So March 1st, license price goes up. When licenses move over to NCE, there are two models that you can choose from. There is a month-to-month, which you're used to today, and then there's the annual commitment. Microsoft has a strategy. I'm trying to phrase this nicely, but Microsoft has changed their strategy to basically what they want, and they want everybody to be on a 1-year commit. So if you go on the 1-year commit, your price is going up regardless. So $8, say, for a license, or $20 for license. I'm just making up arbitrary numbers here. So thank you. So let's do this. Microsoft Office E1 is $8. March 1st, it will be $10. Now, if you do an annual commitment, you can still pay monthly if you choose, but if you commit to an annual commitment to Microsoft for those licenses, you will not see any additional increase. However, if you stay month to month, Microsoft is going to charge you up to a 20% increase on that new $10 price. Let's break that down a little further. On the annual commitment, where you're not going to see the 20% increase, you are locked in to the number of licenses that you have committed to for the year. So if you have 10 employees at $10, you're committing to Microsoft to pay 12 consecutive payments of $10 per user for the course of the year. You cannot go down in licenses at all. Of course, Microsoft says you can go up in licenses when you want. That license that you add maybe the next month will co-term with the original renewal date when you started it, but you're now committing to 11 licenses for the remainder of that time period.
Yeah, and I would just like to point out as part of this, and we're going to dig a little further down in as we kind of go through the slide deck, but this is not anything new from the standpoint if you were to go direct with Microsoft as an end company, they force you to purchase an annual commitment regardless, right? So if I were to go to Microsoft's website and I were to say, hey, I need to buy 100 licenses of 365. They're going to ask for an annual commitment when you go ahead and do that. The difference is, as a cloud service provider, we had previously or currently until for the next two or 3 weeks, we had the opportunity that we had flexibility to kind of up or down your licenses as throughout the year based on, company need, company requirement. So, you have things happen, right? User counts go up or down, mergers and acquisitions happen. Seasonal workers. And we'll talk through a few of those scenarios as we kind of go through this process today. But the point of this is understanding that you do have the ability to talk to still go month to month, and there will be situations where that makes sense. And you have the ability to go with a term or an annual subscription that you can either purchase up front, or you can purchase, you sign the agreement and you still pay on a monthly basis. So there's some value and some benefit to all of those depending upon your situation as a client. Again, we'll kind of talk through that as we kind of go down through this today.
Yep. So you're correct. And so with the month subscriptions on NCE, you're going to have the new price plus a 20% increase on the new price, but it allows you to have the flexibility to move up and down licenses because it's a month to month. You can cancel it at any time during the next month, but you have that flexibility that you don't have in the annual commitments. Yep. Now you can have split licensing. So if you can split your employees knowing, this is a number of employees I know that are going to stay with me for the course of the year. So I'm going to have 10 employees on that, but I have some flexibility and I want to move some people month to month, whether it's seasonal or anything else. So you can have that flexibility to use these licenses. So know that you can do that if you want. There's just an additional cost to the 12-month subscription.
So Nicole, if you could bounce back to the previous pricing slide, and I just want to point out on this slide, Microsoft is not increasing the pricing on every single license. Okay, so there are just a group of licensing. So you've got your Office 365 E1 through E5. You've got your 365 E3 licensing, which is Microsoft 365 E3 licensing. And then from an SMB standpoint, you've got Business Basic, which is email and apps in the cloud only. And you have Business Premium, which is email and apps on the device, plus a plethora of security applications that are included and Windows 10. So these are the primary licenses. Now, what is going to change throughout this process, as Ian had mentioned, was even if let's just say you aren't using these licenses, let's just say you're using Business Standard, which is, it's kind of in between the 365 Business Basic and 365 Business Premium. The price isn't going to change. However, it will change if you can continue to go with month-to-month licensing. If you decide that you want to do term licensing or an annual commit, that price will remain the same. You just have to sign that, hey, I'm okay committing to this annually. So there's a few kind of caveats or gotchas in this process, and that's why we're here, right? Is to kind of point that out, kind of kick off, for people to be aware of what's happening. In addition to that, if you're a nonprofit, if you're, looking at those field frontline worker licenses, the same thing applies, where, they might not change the pricing on the term licensing, but that if you want to go month to month, that price will go up for your employees. So
if you want to look at it this way, the price increase is happening to these SKUs is independent of NCE. This is just a price increase. If they didn't create this NCE revenue model for themselves, as I will put it, yep, this price increase would have happened. The NCE really is the slide we just had up, which is annual or monthly commitments. And if you stay monthly, there's a 20% markup. Yep. That's really what NCE is. I mean, they came up with a nice term, new commerce experience. That is brand new as well. And that is what NCE really boils down to for the impact to your business is, how do I want to purchase these licenses? And how does it impact the cost for me?
So as we go through this, you're going to find there's some other caveats to this, right? So Nicole, if you could bounce to the next slide. A couple of the challenges I think we're going to talk through on this slide, Ian, if you could explain, what is going to happen with change of provider? Meaning, hey, I'm currently with XYZ and I want to move my support over to ABC company or PGH networks. What do we need to be aware of?
That's a great question, Derek. And this is another interesting nuance to the whole new commerce experience. So if you are with a different service provider and you decided that it's time for a change, and PGH Networks is the company, that the MSP that you want to work with, you can go over there and they can provide you all the services that the other MSP does, except one thing. They cannot take over the management of your Microsoft licenses until your 1 year commitment. This only applies to the 1 year commitment license, until that 1 year commitment terminates. That is the way that Microsoft is dictating. The commitments apply on multiple levels. They apply to you and your company, they apply to the MSP, and they apply to Pax8, the distributor.
Yep.
All three have to basically are responsible for the purchasing process, and in PGH Networks or other MSPs, management of that solution stick during that time period. This has been something that everybody is asking Microsoft to change. At this point, they are not being flexible whatsoever. So unfortunately, in that situation, you would be tied to two MSPs, one holding the piece of the Microsoft puzzle until the contract terminates. And there's only one way that we know of now for wiggle room out of that, and it's not really a great way out. You would have to buy the entire contract out from Microsoft, meaning pay them in full, and then start all over again with PGH Networks. So they're really, if you think about that, there is no real viable alternative to unless you want to wait.
So I do anticipate this changing ultimately, because it has to. They don't really have much of an option to not do it. But as it stands right now, or traditionally, what would happen is hey, you guys, as a potential client, you say, hey, you know what, PGH is our company of choice, right? We're tired of our old IT company, for whatever reason. You make a choice to come with us. We say, hey, no problem. On the backside, there's some paperwork that we fill out, and basically we do a record ownership transfer, if you will. And basically what happens is we say, okay, we're moving it from XYZ company to ABC company, and the tenant or your licensing or your Microsoft agreement basically transfers over to your new IT company. What they're basically saying is, in the future, or as we kind of go through this migration, we're going to make it a little bit more challenging on you guys. We're going to have to continue with the billing, staying with that previous IT company. Now, what that doesn't mean is we still will have the ability to have global admin capabilities inside of your tenant. We can go in and make the changes. We can support you. We can do a number of those things. The billing is just going to stay with that previous IT company until that renewal comes up, or as Ian had mentioned, if you decide you want to buy out that contract, you can do that as well. That would be less of a likely scenario, but it is out there. So the other thing that I did want to mention is, as it stands right now, mergers and acquisitions aren't technically supported under the NCE solution. However, that does seem to be coming down the pike. So that's why I feel like we're seeing a little bit of flexibility. But with all things brand new, they kind of got to start out crawling and then get up to a full run eventually. So, but thank you for that change of provider information, Ian. So, Ian, a couple questions on this. So, we had mentioned that Microsoft makes the rules, and within those rules, most of it is going to benefit Microsoft, right? Because they're the 800-pound gorilla. So, we're talking about management of tenants, and basically what a tenant is it is all of your licensing that you own in one grouping, and the tenant ID is basically how Microsoft looks and says, okay, this is PGH Networks, or this is PAX 8, or this is whomever actually owns the licensing. If you're the client, this is XYZ client, and they pull up the tenant ID, and that tenant ID has all of your users, all of your emails, all your domains, everything like that that's within the tenant. We're mentioning that Microsoft is Microsoft, so pausing, canceling, and auto renewing. What do we have to deal with here?
The first one I think is very interesting. You can pause your licensing. Now, let's also keep in mind, let's start with talking about 1-year commitment. So the first walk through these three, we're going to talk about 1-year commits because that's the most impactful change right now. So with 1-year commits, you're committed to paying Microsoft for the license you've agreed to during that commitment for that commitment. Well, you can pause that commitment if you can pause the service if you want, but your billing will still continue. So really, there's no real viable reason to pause the service. But if you want, you can have PGH pause your service, but they're still going to bill you for that service. I don't know why they have that in there, but it's kind of an interesting one. Cancellation. Here's where it gets interesting. So cancellation, a lot of words here. You have 72 hours from, let's talk about a new order. You have 72 hours from the moment that order is placed to cancel that order. However, they won't give you a full refund. This is, again, Microsoft taking care of Microsoft. This is full refund on day 1. Day 2, you're prorated, and day 3, you're prorated. So your refund gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And then after 3 days, or UTC days, which to make it even more complicated, everyone's got to figure out what UTC is, how it affects their time zone and all that stuff. You have no refund whatsoever available to you. 3 days. And then it enters immediately disabled status. Users can't access. Admins can access for 90 days afterwards. And this is a great one. Cancellations cannot be reversed. So you'd have to start all over again. What this is Microsoft's putting you in a very tight, small box to cancel when you first engage with them.
Yep.
This is also something that our community, I mean the distributor community and the MS community is actually trying to push back on. I will tell you that we're not hearing any change to this. Microsoft has drawn a line and is saying no. Can things change in the future? Possibly, but right now the answer is no, nothing's changing, and we have no indication that it will.
So what you're basically saying is if you got 1 day, you make a decision, you say, hey, I'm going to hire this person, right? And we want to prep for this person to be hired. And then the person says, you know what? Change my mind. Don't want to come on, right? We have 1 day to cancel that license. So we're going to be very structured in how we approach some of this, which we're prepared for. Day 2, we get a fractional proration of the license that we maybe made a mistake on as either, a group or what have you. And then the 3rd day, basically, you're going to get pennies on the dollar, is my guess, is my assumption. And, really, after that 3rd day, you're kaput, right? So you're going to own that license for the next 12 months, unless you go with month-to-month licensing, which, they're going to get you with the 20% increase in that month-to-month licensing. And there is some benefit to that. So what about the renewals?
Well, let's go back to what you just said about the month-to-month, because I have had conversations with your peers that I work with other MSPs. And one of the things I'm talking about is if they have a customer that's not sure what they want to do to start month-to-month, you're going to pay a premium because you can convert that over to an annual. You can't convert back, by the way, but you can convert up, of course, because it's Microsoft's benefit. So think through the flexibilities on how you want to get these licenses if this is a concern for you.
Yeah.
Auto renew. This is another one that is yet in, if anyone wants to guess whose benefit? Microsoft's.
Of course.
Because they give you this unbelievable flexibility to be able to toggle on or off your auto renew. because most people don't like auto renews. So auto renew, how does that one work? Well, automatically renews at the end of the term. We fall back to our previous friend cancellations. You've got 72 hours to cancel that. So we don't need to renew that. We know how that tight box works. If you toggle off, however, Microsoft has some great protections in there for themselves. And that protection is it doesn't auto renew and you enter the disabled status. And then go back to.
Which basically means you're not getting your emails.
well, let's go look at that. Let's look back at cancellation disabled status. So disabled status is you can't access your emails and admins can access it for 90 days. So you need to be on top of that.
Yep.
Because bad things can happen. You can basically.
Yeah, I mean, these are the nuances, right, guys? Just, this is why we're having this event, and this is the big importance is these subtle nuances, right? At a high level, you think, okay, well, they're just making me buy a term agreement, which probably I'm going to have the majority of my employees for that annual term. No big deal. But if you don't catch on to some of these nuances, or even if you're a client of us and we don't catch on to some of these nuances, they can be impactful for sure, right? Both financially and business affecting from the standpoint of you might not, you go into an auto renew or you don't go into an auto renew and you go into a, like a disabled status, we'll have some challenges that we have to deal with. So just be aware of this, right? So what's next, Nicole? Upgrades, Microsoft's favorite thing. So Ian, talk to us about upgrades.
Again, this is straightforward. You can upgrade in monthly and you can upgrade in annual commitments. Once you're upgraded, you are locked into that upgrade on an annual commitment for that time. And you notice you can upgrade anytime. There is no downgrade here whatsoever. So you have no ability to downgrade. So example, going from business basic to business standards. When you do upgrade, there are some benefits here. Licenses will automatically assign. You don't have to reassign them. And that's something on the back end. This is some of the back end work that PGH does that you're not aware of. But there is a Microsoft portal where they manage, it's called the admin center, where they manage your licenses. And if you have an employee that's on business basic and you're moving them to standard or standard to premium, whatever it may be, once you upgrade it, it'll sync 1-to-1. You don't have to worry about that user not having access and that. So that is one of the benefits to full upgrades. It's the same policy that's in place and all suites are upgradable. Partial upgrades, this is an option that's available to you. Some seats are upgraded. The subscription ID from the original subscription remains the same. This is, again, a little more back-end work that PGH will be doing for you on that. They have a little more work on when they have to do that. Because if you were partially upgrading, meaning there's multiple ways you can partially upgrade. You can partially upgrade to annual commitment and month-to-month. So there is some maneuvering that PGH will do on the back end to make sure that the license quantities are correct and you're not dropping missing a license and then someone's data disappears. There is also the way a lot of companies do this, and you may have a similar situation right now where you have some employees on business basic and some employees on business standard. So you could upgrade those individually, like I'm going to have more business premium, more business standard, or you could have think about this, you could have 4 different licenses. You could have business premium, business standard, annual commitment, business premium, business standard, monthly commitment.
Yeah.
That's kind of one of the more convoluted partial upgrades, but it can be possible and you can do that. So you have the flexibility to do this within NCE. So you're not going to be tied to all of business standard, annual commitment. You can do both of them in any format that you want or variant.
So they got that portion right, because we have clients and this is all situational. And I think they do understand that not every license fits every user, right? You might have users that are, all they're doing is working off of this device, right? They're not going to need a business premium license. They might need, either a business basic license or a frontline workers license or something like that. And then you might have, a handful of users that are, let's just say they're heavy desktop users or whatnot. That might be beneficial for a business premium license. So they got it right in the sense of saying, look, you can upgrade whatever you want. But they did make the rule, once you upgrade, you're ours, right? So once you do change that, you make that change, you can't downgrade. So what does that mean? I can't downgrade from a month-to-month license back down to an annual commit. So because there's that 20% increase on the month-to-month license, once I make that decision, I can't downgrade. Now, the good thing about month-to-month is just what it said. It's month-to-month. So, hey, once the end of that license term, which is a month, happens, then I could, pick another license and go with an annual commit. But if I'm midterm, say middle of the month or something like that, I make a boo-boo. I say, hey, you know what? I don't want month-to-month. I just want to add this to annual. You got to wait for the following month in order to make that necessary change. So, just be aware of these things, right? So you can always go up, you can never go down. What do we got next?
There are some things we should talk about with that, and that is seasonal workers or
Sure.
Industries that have seasons or periods in time where there are specific. They hire short-term employees. The example that we hear the most are accounting firms. We're in the period right now where they hire different, just short-term employees to get through the tax period. So what the strategy that we've heard the most for that is okay, what is my full-time employee count? Okay, and if I choose to do the annual commitment, I'm going to put all of those employees on the annual commitment. Yeah. I know what my flow is for the year, so I'm comfortable with number X for that. But now I've got these other employees that are only here 2, 3, 4 months. What do I do with that? And the strategy there is to move them month to month.
Yeah.
Yes, you're going to be paying a 20% increase, but it's for a shorter period of time. And over the course of 12 months, it's going to be more cost effective for companies to take that strategy.
Absolutely.
So think about that there is that flexibility that you have. And what I recommend for everybody on this call, you probably have some questions and concerns like what is the best strategy for me? How should I look at this and build it out for my company? That's what Derek is here for. That's what PGH Networks is here for. Yeah. Have a sit down conversation with them, spend the time to talk through this, and then build your Microsoft licensing strategy based on that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, for my clients personally, right? Because being director of sales, I do have a subset of clients that I manage, and we've already kind of started that conversation because it is strategic. You're going to have to start out strategically and kind of make the right choice to begin, right? Because maybe we don't want to just flip all your licenses as it stands today. Maybe we do want to be strategic and say, hey, let's look at your license structure, make sure that this is everything that you want and need. And then look at, hey, what do we want to do from an annual? What do we want to do from a monthly commit? Are these license types correct for you, or is now the time to kind of refresh everything, what have you? So, if you haven't had those conversations yet with the rest of our team or even with me, I mean, I make mistakes as well. Just let's have that conversation. Reach out, talk to us. Let's do it. If you are a new prospective client, or maybe you're not a client of ours at all, and you're just joining, to learn some new stuff, just reach out to the marketing team over here at PGH, right? marketing@pghnetworks.com, and they'll get in touch with us, and we can have those conversations with you. It's a little tricky, but I think we can get through this ultimately, and we will, keep you abreast like we're doing now of the updates and changes that I can almost guarantee are going to happen over the next 6 to 12 months, in true Microsoft fashion. So, yeah, he's right. I mean, and not only, accounting firms, but, really anybody that has those kind of frontline workers, if you will. So healthcare organizations, we have a number of like home health type companies where they have traveling nurses. We have, construction where they have people that are out doing field work, and maybe, they got a huge project that you have to spin up, right? That month to month does make sense in those situations. But we're gonna have to look at that as on an as needed basis to make sure that, you start running the numbers, you make sure the licensing SKUs are correct, you make sure that the numbers make sense, because you start getting up into like the 6 or 8 or 12, 9 month where these guys are kind of contracted, if you will. It might make then sense to look at an annual commit. So we just kind of have to work those numbers out and make sure that it fits your company specifically. So what's next, Nicole? Billing. So much fun.
Yeah, we've gone over quite a lot of this, but one of the Microsoft has already had this in place. They're just really bringing it to the forefront again. So even your month to month has a commitment date, an expiration date, a start date, renewal date. They're all the same thing. The day that you purchase the licensing is your commitment start date. The commitment expiration date is 12 months after that. Important thing to know on this, month to month, fine, it's month to month. You can do everything you want the following month. This really is important when you're talking about the 1-year commitments.
Yep.
And why that's important is that very generous 72-hour cancellation period and the very generous refund policy with the cancellation period.
It is generous, isn't it? 3 days?
Yes, it is. It's buy Microsoft stock, because that's where it's generous for you. That's where it helps. So this really is the billing. Just know that the day you buy it, the start date, 12 months later is the expiration date, and you have 72 hours that bookend each of those time periods when you can make changes.
So one of the things that in that previous slide we talked about is the proration, right? And we're already doing this, and so is Microsoft, right? So if you are a client of PGH, you're kind of already used to this. Hey, not everybody can start on the first day of the month, right? You hire employees based on your need, not based on, starting the beginning of the month. Sometimes you start in the middle of the month, sometimes you start on the 3rd day of the month, whatever. Microsoft does have the ability to prorate those licenses. And what ends up happening is when you do that proration, that first month, let's just say you start on the 15th of the month, what'll happen is you won't get an invoice that first month. You'll actually get billed on the second month for the entire second month, and then whatever you used within the first month. So basically, let's just say each month is 30 days. You basically get billed for 45 days in that scenario within that second month, and then just continue to bill on a monthly basis. So, just be aware of that. You're gonna, you might see some weird some weird invoicing, but if you're already a client of PGH, you're already comfortable with that, because that's how we do it now. So that's the general gist of everything. I know that there's probably a lot of questions. We've kind of put some questions together just to start warming it up. But I would recommend, if you have questions right now, throw them in the chat, and we can start to answer them on a one-to-one basis after we kind of go through all these fun questions that we've created with pictures of our favorite people here at PGH. Not sure if anybody's aware of the person on this first picture, but Greg Pack is one of the managing partners here, and has a great head of hair. So question 1, will I be automatically moved to New Commerce Experience? Ian, thoughts on that?
So just because in the true spirit of Microsoft, everything being crystal clear and simple to understand, the answer is yes and no. Nothing is going to be moving March 1st. The pricing starts the increase starts March 1st on all net new licenses. Microsoft has pushed the conversion out to July, and July is when the new commerce experience will be on everybody, and everyone will be subject to those monthly surcharges.
Yeah.
If they don't convert to annual. So there's your yes and no. They did have to keep it a little confusing, but at some point in time that will happen.
Perfect. So it's going to be a phased. They basically talked about 3 phases, and Ian just talked about 2, and we've kind of already gone through one of the phases, and it was basically, hey, everybody in the world, we're changing what we're doing. That was phase 1. Phase 2 is March 1st. Phase 3 is going to be July 1st. So as Ian had mentioned, what's the next question? Oh, yet another PGH wonder, Mark Kaluska, one of the account managers here. If you guys are on, he's wonderful. Reach out to him if you have questions, if he's your client already. But question number 2, can I have both annual commitment and monthly commitment for the same subscription? And I think we kind of covered this, but let's just make sure we drill it home here. Ian, what's your response to that?
Absolutely. You have that flexibility to select what you want to be on an annual commitment and what you want to be on monthly. And let's go back to the healthcare workers, the CPAs, or if it's just the strategy you want to employ, you can split those subscriptions.
Excellent. Question number 3. For those of you that don't know, I'm sure maybe you've never seen her, but you have definitely talked to her. Jody Haber, she's our admin, and she's in charge of all the billing and accounts receivable. So I can promise you, somebody, if you work with PGH, somebody at your company has spoken with Jody. But Jody has brought up a great question. What if I purchase through another MSP and want to move to PGH Networks? Well, I have to wait until the renewal period. Well, I have to wait until the renewal period changes to avoid duplicate billing. And we kind of talked through this, but Ian, what's your response to that?
There wouldn't be duplicate billing because you can only be with one provider at a time. So if you do the annual commitments, you are tied to that MSP for the remainder of that commitment until the renewal period. And then again, let's go back to the 72 hours. You have 72 hours to make that change. In that 72 hours, the transfer of the management of that licenses on the Microsoft backend can occur.
Perfect. Yep. So I know we talked through that a little bit, and it's important to know. And honestly, it's really on us if what whether you're coming or going, which we hope it's the first, not the second. We're responsible of making sure that those transfers take place. And what's our next question, Nicole? For those of you that don't know, he's a mastermind of technology, and he's also one of our other managing partners, Bill Weiser. Bill's asking a good question. What is the renewal date for newly added seats to a subscription on New Commerce Experience?
The term in the term that we use for this is co-term. So yes, if you purchase licenses today, your agreement would start on the 24th of March, and 2 months from now you added 5 more licenses, they would terminate on the 24th of March.
Perfect. So co-terminate, right? So I got one license I bought in January 1st of this year. That goes all the way to December 31st. If I buy licenses in May under that same tenant, those will also co-terminate for December 31st of that year. So it's not like I'm buying a license and then 12 months later that license is still valid. It's going to co-terminate to whatever the length of the original agreement is. So that is a little bit easier to digest, because that could be a real slippery slope. If every time you buy a license it goes 12 months, that can be pretty hard to manage. So it sounds like we've hit the end of our session as far as all of the fun facts and information. Ian, I would like to thank you so much.
We're not done. We have a Q&A. We have a question.
Yep, absolutely.
And Mark, no, nonprofits not being affected whatsoever. I'll give one simple answer today. No, you're fine. Nonprofits not impacted.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you. Do we have any other questions while we're in here? And while we're in here waiting for questions to pop up, I would like to thank Ian for taking the time to work with us from PAX 8. As I had mentioned, awesome distributor, have been really great, especially on the Microsoft licensing side. All of our information has come from them on for this NCE migration strategy. So Ian, you've been really, really fantastic. And the other person I'd like to thank is Nicole. Every event that we do, she's the mastermind behind it all. She's the one to make all this work. So we do have a couple more questions. So Mary, can you share the new pricing for each license? Yes, Mary, we at PGH, so that does bring up a good point that I would like to mention. New license pricing. So as PGH's approach, what you're going to find if you are a client for PGH Networks, starting tomorrow, we are going to be sending out some DocuSign letters to all of our client contacts, primary contacts, if you will. And within that letter, we're going to ask you to review the terms of the NCE agreement. And within the terms of the NCE agreement, we will be showing you what the new licensing structure looks like and what the price looks like for each of those new licenses. But as Nicole has shown you right on that screen, there's only a handful of licenses that are going to change pricing. And then we just have to confirm if we're going to do an annual commit or if we're going to go month to month. So no real big deal on that, but just know that that's coming. That will be sent out tomorrow, or at least start getting sent out tomorrow to all of our clients, and we can go from there. Another question that came up was nonprofit. Will that change? And as Ian had mentioned, no. There's nonprofit is not going to be part of the NCE. So this sounds like it's just primarily for commercial licensing versus not for profit or nonprofit licensing. So for our users that are nonprofit, sounds like you get a hall pass. Do we have any other questions while we're out there? So as I mentioned, we will be kind of going and updating you guys as things change, as I anticipate they will throughout the course of the next 12 to 24 months. And we very likely will have another event. But if you do have additional questions, you have additional concerns, you can, if you're an existing account for PGH Networks, you can reach out to your account manager, either Mark or myself, or you can reach out to Greg or Bill or, whoever you're most comfortable with. But for some reason, if you're not currently a client for PGH Networks, which you should be, because we're awesome, we really try to go the extra mile for everybody. But if you are interested in talking further about the licensing changes or really anything IT related, give us a ring, 724-888-7007. Email us at marketing@pghnetworks.com. In addition, Nicole will be sending out a copy of the recording to anybody who has registered for the event. But you can also go to our YouTube page as she will be posting this up on YouTube. Nicole, what's for those people that are interested in our next event, what do we have in store for our next event?
In the coming months, we have topics that are expanding beyond what we have been doing the past year that's just technology based. So we want to put information out there that's beneficial to business owners, full circle. We're going to have everything from HR, creating a positive work culture. We have, I think of what else we have going on there. We have a strong lineup, though. I can tell you that in the coming months.
So as you were may be aware, we were focusing a lot on technology over the last 6 months. And what we're looking at is starting to expand that out to just more general business use cases and business requirements. So over the next 6 months, you're going to see a lot more expanded content because we see a lot of people asking certain things like, hey, I don't have an HR department today. I don't have a tool to help me manage HR. What should I do? Or, hey, you know what? I want to increase my work culture, as Nicole had mentioned. So we're going to be bringing subject matter experts in on a monthly basis for different topics. One thing I would also ask is if you have a topic that you want to review, and you'd like us to kind of do an event like this on these types of topics, shoot an email over to marketing@PGH Networks, and we'll absolutely talk through it. Somebody in the chat, Mark, had mentioned Windows 11, and I do think that's going to be a viable topic as we get down the path a little bit this year. We don't recommend moving to Windows 11 just yet. It's still a little bit of an open conversation, but I think that would end up being a topic as we go down the path later in the year. But if you do have any other topics that you want to review, send an email to Nicole over at marketing, and we'll add it to the list. And we'll talk about it, right? We'll bring in the subject matter expert as we always do. But with that being said, I want to thank Nicole for hosting this, putting everything together. I do want to thank Ian, that you have been instrumental in this event and this NCE topic. And then I also want to thank everybody for joining. Thank you so much. Hopefully this information was valid and viable for you, and you got a lot of benefit from it. But with that being said, I will let everyone go, and I'll talk to you soon.
Take
Thanks,
care.
everyone.
Happy to help.
See you, everyone.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.